everyone. One type of story I find really fascinating is religious cults, because there are multiple angles those stories come from. Some from the leader, some from the news, and some from people inside the cult as well, which more often than not tend to be polar opposite of what outsiders perceive of the group. And that could be because it's their honest opinion of the group, or they could be pressured by the leader to set a good impression to, lose some of the attention they're getting from the news and maybe even the police. Most of the time, with a very large group that have absolutely devout followers, they tend to be seen as a cult, with the police being concerned about them, which is what happened to this Japanese Christian communion you can see in the video today. When they were at the peak of everyone's attention in the 70s, they didn't really have a lot of followers, but they were getting a bad image because everyone saw that the leader had bad intentions. Which in the beginning of the video, it does seem like he will, but you want to see what direction this story went.
This was the moment police finally caught the notorious cult leader Sengoku Jesus. The 2-year-long manhunt was over, and now
A bit prideful, Sengoku Jesus.
missing women, and if any of them were even still alive. But before they could answer that question, the police released him. They just let him walk. The public was absolutely stunned.
Oh, the face on him, he's happy.
Shocking revelations to come. This is the story of Jesus's Ark. Japan.
Is that a name he gave it himself, or the one that community has bestowed upon him?
Takeyoshi was a 52-year-old door-to-door knife salesman. You might think he's a loser, but this guy survived World War II and once owned an entire knife factory. And you know what? Sengoku was one hell of a knife.
He showed a picture of him in Hiroshima. That would immediately make me believe that he's like the second coming of Christ if he like crawled out of the rubble and it came to preach about Christianity in Japan.
He was just a charming guy with a magnetism that made everyday folks trust him. And the ladies, they loved him. After he showed the housewives his
How low a standard that some 50-year-old wrinkly guy can get older women, hot and bothered.
First thing about old JC, because the last time he came over, some very unchill things happened. But if Sengoku was the one leading the Bible study group, now they were interested. But you're probably wondering, who the hell would go to a Bible study group led by a knife salesman? As it turns out, a lot of people, mostly young women. What really drew them in was the way Sengoku talked about his dark past. He didn't lie, he used to be a really bad guy, a spoiled brat whose rich parents would bail him out of trouble every time. The Navy gave him a really bad temper.
Just like the real Jesus Christ, he'd always be pampered by his parents, his carpenter dad.
Only problem was, he hated the church and hated pastors even more. All he wanted was to read the Bible and become more like Jesus, teach like Jesus, live like Jesus lived. So what did he do? He started a commune, specifically a Bible study commune that he called Jesus's Ark. Like Noah. Within a year, they had quite a following.
That does feel somewhat more arrogant, like I said before, where instead of Noah's Ark, it's Jesus' Ark. So was his whole message being that Jesus himself is being like, his body's being like an envoy for Jesus to save a bunch of people from like some event.
To live here, an 80 square meter prefab shack on the outskirts of Tokyo, surrounded by a makeshift iron fence. By the late 70s,
just like the real gates of heaven.
People called this place home. As you could imagine, the parents of these runaway girls were pissed. Every day they'd show up, banging on the walls of the compound and screaming into megaphones.
It's funny. They would bend down like dogs if like one of them got struck by lightning, and they would immediately believe him if he said he was Jesus himself.
Than their own freaking parents. The mothers eventually got so desperate they went to the police, who put detectives on the case. Tensions got so hot that in May of '78, a police squad busted down the door of the compound. But it was too late. The group had disappeared. Sengoku was tipped off about the raid. And
did they dig like holes under the house and like tunnel out?
Running from town to town and avoiding the police. Sengoku kept a tight ship. If any of them got pulled over, even for speeding, and had to show their ID, they'd pack up and move.
Surely in any new town, they would immediately recognize who he is, because his charming characteristic would make any woman love him immediately.
They hustled, working any job they could to make ends meet. He had them selling clothes, tea, seaweed, and, you guessed it, knives. When that wasn't enough, Sengoku's followers dipped into their own savings. One woman even sold her house to help them stay afloat. Over the next 2 years, they set up in more cities than Cirque du Soleil. Meanwhile, desperate parents were reaching out to every news organization they could, and after hundreds of letters, finally one listened. Feminist magazine Fujin Koron. In January 1980,
Oh, he's pissed with the real
an
feminists.
article titled Sengoku Jesus, Return Our Daughters. The media went wild, painting this picture of a smooth-talking cult leader who brainwashed.
If you were a Westerner, like in Europe, reading that title like translating to English would make no sense.
Death cults were on everyone's mind. Some magazines started comparing Jesus' arc to Manson and his family, and others claimed that Sengoku had created a harem. So, Sengoku was now public enemy number one. Every day, the tabloids pumped out new stories which only got crazier and crazier. I'm talking stuff like, Sengoku Jesus has already killed the women one by one. Was Sengoku Jesus behind the mysterious 300 million yen heist? Yeah,
What?
some of these conspiracy theories were obviously...
That's probably like the best month for like journalists. They can make any article they want about
bunch
him.
of media outlets started receiving letters, this time from the women, apparently. They all said the same things. We're fine. We weren't kidnapped, and we're definitely not a death cult. Yeah, that's a totally reassuring sentence. Needless to say, these letters were not convincing anybody. All the commotion soon made its way to the Japanese Diet, their parliament, where representatives called Jesus' Ark a group of fanatics and demanded an investigation. Next thing you know, the police began a massive 2,000-strong manhunt. They
Jesus
searched
Christ.
everywhere and
Look,
came up with
that is your own army at that
6 months
point.
later, the cops were losing hope and running out of leads when all of a sudden, they got a call from a very unlikely source.
Oh boy.
An ambulance had just picked up a strange, ragged-looking old man who fit Sengoku's description.
No
He'd had a heart
way.
attack, but when they asked his name, he refused to answer.
You know, it's funny like how they have so much, freedom, I guess, to go anywhere, but it really doesn't seem like they would be like that, free form. Like, he said they went from town to town, making money to like kind of like survive. But I feel like when you have a group of women, following you like at every moment, you would have to be more grounded, stay in one place. And even if you were like traveling a lot, people would see you like on the bus or a train, just like 30 women huddled around this one 50-year-old guy that looks, he looks unique. Like, he really doesn't look like the average kind of person. Like, there's no way that pencil thin mustache and wrinkly like wax skin was that, common, that they really couldn't find the exact guy. I mean, they got pretty lucky with that one ambulance that picked him up, and they knew right then and there that it's him. So there were definitely other times they probably saw him like outside in public. But I guess like there weren't any police around, so they couldn't, rush him immediately. I also want to know if they lived like in the cities or like on the borders, like in forests, maybe.
They immediately put a guard right outside Sengoku's hospital room, but that didn't keep the reporters out.
I was gonna say like maybe they put the board up for the, fanatics, but no, it's for the journalists.
そうしか言えませんね。
で悪いとは思わない。
He does look a bit angelic in his bed.
かけたと思わない。病人なんでお願いします。
そういう
He would have been like, I can't speak about this. Put some money in my hand, I'll feel better.
The investigators followed the ambulance call to the dormitories of a printing company and hit the jackpot.
Oh,
There,
boy.
they found Sengoku's wife and all of the missing women. They were safe.
How many? I want to know.
Something was wrong.
Also, that's a weird power dynamic. You have a wife, but then you also have like, 30 women, just begging to rip off your pants and suck your dick.
The police had caught Sengoku and saved the women. Next, they picked Sengoku up from the hospital in handcuffs. He was taken to a cell and charged with defamation and assault. Everyone in Japan celebrated the news. Everyone but the last people you'd expect. The women
parents.
he had supposedly kidnapped. The day after Sengoku's arrest, all of them got together and held a press conference, flat out denying that they had been held against their will. Not only that, they tore into the media for painting Sengoku and
I know it doesn't make no sense because he's in prison, but really funny seeing like red dots all over those 30 women on the forehead.
ですね。
解決するのはどういうことですか。
一番ね、最善の方法としてはね、その親御さんちゃんと話し合いされてね、お互いのね、こう誤解っていうか。
Is that guy on the left meant to be like his spokesman or like part of his
その
harem?
ままにね、こう歩かれることじゃないですか。
2年間の逃亡生活がね、成り立ったっていう逃亡生活ってやり方はね、すごくこう妥当性だと思うんですけども、そのやり方が成り立った
Is it even they know it's bull? to like go on the run and still, not hunt for like roadkill and eat it.
だと思うんですね。
Sengoku's followers respected and looked up to him. He was patient and kind. He was their teacher. Sengoku lived and worked alongside his disciples. He even built their first commune with his own 2 hands. He was just a great leader.
Oh, that's why, the Jesus Ark. He built it himself. It would be more badass if he built like a huge like cruise liner with his own bare hands. I would join at that point.
夫婦っていう形以外はありません。
So, what made these women leave their comfortable middle-class lifestyles for a knife salesman's shack in the first place? Well,
Are you kidding me?
every
You thought
rich
from that wrinkly ass 80-year-old face you wouldn't join
in
him?
life. They found his message liberating. As one woman explains, the pressure to excel was tremendous, but those who achieved it didn't seem happy at all. Why? The luxury jacuzzi that her dad bought for her was nice, but she felt happier in the commune's cold concrete bath. In the end, the whole
Do you think that does seem like the Japanese lifestyle? Like when in any other country that dreams for like a huge mansion, I feel like the Japanese people just enjoy like a tiny gulag room in an apartment with like 200 tenants.
name Sengoku Jesus. They made that up too. After the press conference, the police had nothing to hold Sengoku on. So they had to let him go. They released him. He was free. That was it.
Surely the parents being pissed off would hold him with something in court.
Moved to Fukuoka and built a mega commune. By this point, the police had already brought all the women back to their families. But once they heard that Sengoku was free and what he was building,
娘さんたちは全部親御さんのところに一度帰りましたね。
いやいや、帰りました、帰りました。
それが全部
Usually, like, yeah, they were sent home, but they're gonna come crawling back.
yes, every single one from all over Japan came right back to him. But maybe you're still not convinced. Maybe this story about a creepy cult leader guy actually being totally cool is a bit hard to believe. But you want to know the most shocking part of this whole thing? Everything I've told you so far took place in 1979, 1980. Well, guess what? 45 years later, they're still together. They
Hell
still
yeah.
live in the commune. After the whole
Badass.
scandal blew over and they all came back to Sengoku, they started living a mostly normal life. As normal as it can be living in the Jesus' Ark mega commune, at least. The women started a restaurant back in the 80s and it's done pretty well. I mean, it's still open, but more on that
God.
later. They all continue studying the Bible and
That'd
practicing.
be one of those things where, like, if you were some tourist traveling around, like, Japan in this one district, you would walk in like, oh, this is so cool, but you have no idea, like, the story behind it. Like, maybe they would put, like, on your phone, like, translating the story behind it, and it would still make no sense.
In 2001, Sengoku passed away from natural causes at the age of 78.
2001, crashing a plane to a tower.
Has led the commune ever since. It's now women only and has 12 inhabitants, most of them elderly. They rotate cooking and weekly tasks in the commune, which has dormitories and a specific area for Bible study. When the women go out, they always go in groups, even for shopping.
Hell yeah. To prevent, any predators flanking them.
And they still follow it today. The restaurant they started, it's called Daughters of Zion, and it's actually something called a snack, which is a Japan-specific type of business. If you've ever heard of a hostess club, it's kind of like on the same spectrum, but much tamer, closer to a normal bar. Generally, the patrons are men who do pay to sit at the bar, chat, and eat hand-cooked food. But Daughters of Zion has very strict...
That has to be the worst kind of bar, because they would definitely force, like Bible verses down their throat, just, to make it interesting. But they would all leave once they did that.
Unlike hostess clubs, the men are not allowed to sit on the same side as the women, and they're definitely not allowed to invite them to meet outside. The women put on some...
I can only imagine the passionate, religious debates they have there in the bar.
Interested, you can go visit. But please be respectful. They probably don't get very many foreign guests. You might be wondering, has anyone left Jesus' Ark? And the answer is yes, a few people over the years. One of the reasons people leave is that the commune added a no marriage rule. Members who get married must leave. I guess the idea is that the commune is supposed to be all single women now. The members who get married are still allowed to participate in all the activities and Bible study and stuff. They just can't live in the commune anymore.
That has to be part of the new rule. She probably, no way.
Guys, monkey!
That's maybe like 20% more inclined to join them if I live in Japan.
Reputation of Japanese media organizations. The public kind of caught on that the media spent years attacking an innocent man when the evidence that they were wrong was right in front of them. It would take decades for the media to regain the trust of the public. Seriously, even when the Olmu Shindikyo, an actual dangerous cult, started popping up in 1989, news organizations sounding the alarm had to go out of their way and write, "This isn't like Jesus' Ark, we promise." Basically, everyone's come to accept that Sengoku never let a
To be
cult...
fair, I can't deserve that. Not because of this case, but just media all over the world, always like vulturing on small issues.
Honestly, this is one of my favorite stories I've ever put on my channel. When I started researching, I thought if I kept digging and digging, eventually I'd find something bad that Sengoku did, but I never found anything. I'm definitely going to go visit the Daughters of Zion bar next time I'm in Japan, and when I do, I'll make another video and talk about my experience there. This was a really fun video to make, even though it's a bit different from my normal content. So if you enjoyed it, make sure you like and subscribe, because that tells me I can make stuff like this in the future.
You guys have to see in general.
Thank you very much to my patrons, including...
Yeah, that's a good story. Yeah, he is right. Like, it really did feel like it would just have like a sharp turn to like something like they kidnap like, you know, 10 extra women against the world to be part of the commune. But now in hindsight, the worst thing that he maybe did was just like take the girl from their parents and like be part of the religion. But even then, the cult never transitioned to like Charles Manson's like, you know, their own group that would do like heinous shit. But that was probably the reason why the media was so, you know, like on the nerve of trying to like document everything this guy does and put him in a bad light. I mean, that's kind of funny. The fact like they were so off the target about like him being like a horrible person with a bad cult and then getting it wrong, that for the next couple of decades, whenever there's like, you know, something else bad similar to a cult, they have to specify, okay, we're sorry, we're confident that this cult specific is doing bad stuff. Please, for love of God, just, you know, trust us. And you know what? I would like to see like the kind of bar that he's built. I mean, the first kind of like crack shed he built was kind of, you know, impressive. Like he built it by himself, but was probably gonna rush off like one headquarters to have everyone like gather around in. But this time, you know, when he finally released, he's like, okay, now that everyone's, you know, finally stops hating me for no reason, I can have like a nice place. Which, to be honest, that building he built with his own two hands or with help, either way, it still looked pretty decent. It was probably one of those buildings that took like a bit longer to finish, because if you don't have a large manpower, you can take, you know, way longer. But that makes it, you know, a bit more respectable that he built it with, you know, with his own two hands and probably with his own money. But there was that one story where like a woman like sold her house for him, which that was probably I mean, there was a lot of red flags, but that was probably the first big one. I was like, okay, he's gonna use his money for like dumb. But if you actually use it to build like a nice commune, you know, that's at least decent. So I do feel somewhat bad for, you know, for calling him like, you know, a wax kind of guy with like wrinkly skin and a really creepy pencil thin mustache when all he wants to do is, you know, love Jesus. God damn.